Welcome, televiewers, to another edition of Igniting Insightful Conversations. I am your anchor, Blessing Dola, broadcasting live from the OLD and TV studios. And with me today is an amazing person. She's an advocate of leadership, an OD practitioner, a CEO, and lots more. Hello, madam, and thank you very much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Blessing.
I am very honored. So, could you kindly tell us where you're streaming from?
Okay, I'm streaming from Rivers State, Nigeria.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for joining. So, actually, before the session, I had some few questions put in place, and I would really love us to go straight into the questions. So, before we start, could you tell us a very brief information about who you are?
My name is Chigaemezu Regina, like you already know. I'm a doctoral candidate of social political philosophy in a Nigerian university where I'm also privileged to lecture in. And on a scale of what I do often, aside my profession as a lecturer, I work with women, I work with the girl child, and basically what I do for the women is that I help them through the path of life. I help them gain purpose, clarity of what it is about them for life. I also help them develop confidence in order to harness their potentials for personal growth and for societal relevance. So in brief, that's about me.
Yeah, society relevance is an interesting word. I'm gonna put a pin on that, and I'll come back to that shortly. So,
Okay.
you mentioned you work with girls and women and stuff like that. Um,
Yes.
with that, I understand that you are the founder of DWCI. Can you tell us about this,
Yes.
please?
Okay, DWCI, it's an acronym to mean Dare Women for Change Initiative, and it was rightly founded here in Nigeria in the year 2019. So it's a registered non-governmental organization, a skill-based non-governmental organization on a mission to educate, empower, and equip young girls and women with the necessary skill sets to help them through the process of building capacity to evolve into becoming their best versions in order to get involved in nation building.
Mm,
And yeah, we get to achieve this mission statement through some of our projects, the ones we are currently on. And so far, it's been an interesting journey working with women and having to be a part of their huge success, becoming their best versions and driving the social change they desire.
that's quite uplifting. So, what led to this? You're the CEO. What was the vision? What was
Yeah.
the thought? What was the inspiration behind this?
Okay, in sum, I would want to call it my lived experience, right? My lived experience formed the Imo states. It's in the eastern part of Nigeria where women, I know it's some sort of a global thing, but I'm trying to relate it to my personal experience. That's why I said it's about my lived experiences, right? So in my society or in my community, in my state, Imo State, it's assumed women were more of a dependent being. We were assumed not to be able to like take up positions or build businesses. We were more or less seen as the second citizen, so to say. And then yes, and then I could remember during the times of my mom and the stories she told me, which also attributed to my lived experiences. During their times, the male folks were sent to schools, the male folks were sent to develop themselves, whereas the females were just left in the house, like relegated in the background to tend for family, reproductive functions, and all those domestic sort of work, right? So I grew up in that sort of society, and my mom being an advocate for women living their best versions, will I say, I wouldn't want to use swear words, right? For lack of words right now, she stood her ground to ensure that all her girl childs were, at least to an extent, had first degrees, like saw the light, saw education, had education. And it's also something unfortunate, part of my experience, that my mom had was more of the girls. And in an African setting, in a Nigerian setting, the male child, it's more or less seen as superior because of lineage and because of descendancy. keeping,
Inheritance.
right? Inheritance, so to say. So these were, that's why I said earlier that it is a global problem. It is patriarchy, male dominated society. It's what we used to face and what we currently face, but I didn't want to like attribute it to a global problem. That's why I'm bringing in my own lived experiences, right? I knew, and I knew what my mom had to go through, trying to ensure that we stood our grounds, trying to ensure that we saw the light via education, that we were at least enlightened and not just married off, right? Like child marriage and all that. So she stood her ground, and she at least to an extent advocated for where I am today. So I say it also that if I've been empowered by this one woman who stood her ground to see to me becoming what I am today, then I also need to stand the gap to reawaken the minds of other women, to reorient the minds of other women, that aside the stereotype that the society had claimed on us as women, whereas we are human beings before we are women. If I can succeed in reorienting their minds that they are more and they can become more, then we will have more empowered women who understand these things, and the society will become better.
Wow. Wow. You said a lot of things that I really already have like three questions, but
Okay.
because I'll take on your last phrase, reorienting.
Yes.
You use the word reorienting. So I'll put a pin on that and I'll come back to that later. And
Okay.
you mentioned lights, and I'll come back to that later. So I'm just curious, how do you intend to reach the suburbs, the rural areas? And we all are from Africa. We know there are some villages which are quite hard to reach. But your vision, as what you said, aims at reaching at the entirety of your region. So I want to ask, how do you intend to reach those other people who are in the suburbs and in the rural areas? You know, their
Okay,
minds are
so
already crafted. So how do you intend to?
yes.
Yeah.
The truth is, a problem for one, it's more like a problem for all, right? So what's the issues about gender inequality, or should I say issues about gender-based violence, it's not something peculiar to just the rural area or to the urban area. These are common problems as women we face. There are something, womanhood, if I should use the word womanhood in quotes, right? So these are problems we have in womanhood, right? So it's nothing to say that the urban doesn't experience and then the suburbs, that's the rural areas, experience. So my organization, it's more or less like a grassroots movement, right? I am just a person, I am just an individual, a privileged founder of this organization, right? But I work with like-minded women whom through trainings and mentorship I've been able to at least reawaken their consciousness to understand that they are more. So I've been able to an extent, through coaching programs and mentorship programs, helped polish their abilities, help them see their strengths, to see that they can become more, to see that they can aspire to be great. So what I do with this, so far women have been able to reorient and reawaken their minds and helped discover their path, is that we formed something more, I wouldn't call it a coalition because we are still under one umbrella called the Women for Change Initiative. So our outreaches are more centered on in the grassroots, right? So we take our outreaches to the grassroots, and you can't tell, you can't get into the suburbs to tell them about their problems and not provide a solution, right? So as we are going in to tell them, as a woman, as a young girl, you can become more, you can dream wild, you can be ambitious. We are putting up empowerment schemes like trainings to help them strengthen their abilities, help them dare their capabilities and see that actually what we are saying ain't just words or facts, but it's practicable, right? So we get into these suburbs in order to help change that mindset that perhaps all they've seen in their environment, all they've seen growing up, their background and all, has just been some demeaning self-esteemed factors that are somewhat different, or different their mindsets, right? To not see more of themselves. So when we take such programs to them, when we take such empowerment programs to the suburbs, as you're telling them that you can be more, right? I am this, I have become this, or I'm still on the journey of becoming this. And I have brought this light to you to also see that working this part, you can emerge, you can become more. So we merge our words, we merge our capacity building, what will I call it, capacity building trainings, not just in theoretically, not just verbally, but we take practical things to them likewise, right? Because we understand there are factors that has, to an extent, there are factors that delimit this mindset issue. There are factors that make them think less of themselves, which one of it is poverty, one of it is not having to dare themselves to perhaps take up little positions and see how they can enhance in it. So we take such opportunities, trainings to them to dare their abilities and see how far they can become on the journey. I don't know if I answered your question, but what I'm trying to say in sum is this. Our organization is not just centered in the urban metropolis areas. We take it down to the rural and to the grassroots. And I'm able to say we are able to achieve this because our organization is a volunteer based organization. So I don't just work alone. Yes, I've been privileged to learn few things. I've been privileged to work through a certain part. So the women, I have been also privileged to help see the light, take up the mission. Is like an assignment. So they take it up and then they run to these rural communities to, shed the light to.
Because personally I'm from Africa as well. I'm sure you know Cameroon. I'm from Africa, and these kind of things, when I hear them, they are quite uplifting, and it's very. I wish you can have more women like this. Now, but I'm curious with all these things you've said. Obviously, there are men in power who will turn to resist this change you're trying to make. How do you plan on? How do you plan on tackling resistance?
Okay, at
And
least
one
there
more
are
thing,
some.
I just remembered one more thing. How you
Yeah.
plan on tackling resistance? And then these other ladies who has to be within this particular domain, within this slavery domain, how do you change their mindset? And how do you tend to handle resistance to change by the top, obviously, or by the set leaders, the male leaders? How do you intend to tackle that?
Okay, so let's start with how we work with resistance in the rural communities, for instance. Okay, one of our advocacy strategies, I would love to call it an advocacy strategy, it's we don't just get into these communities and we start scouting for women to gather and to, give talks to, or to showcase our empowerment schemes or cooperatives, whatever it is we came for. We work majorly with the chieftains of the town, right? We engage, I would love to call them stakeholders. So we engage with the stakeholders of that community. It could be the chieftains, it could be the traditional rulers, whatever it is that it's involved or obtainable in the community. We work with them. And my first advocacy strategy, it's when I engage with the stakeholders, I don't just from the blues try to make them see reasons why they should empower their women, or why they should allow their women to perhaps have education or build businesses and all the rest of it all. There is one simple question I always ask, and that's one thing I teach those I work with. Once you're about engaging, be it a stakeholder or anybody, I said in the earlier part of this section that the issue about gender inequality or low representation of women, or lack of women being self-aware of their strengths and their abilities, is a global problem, right? And almost every man or woman must have had a lived experience. So what I usually ask is this: what experience have you had perhaps for the men? What experience have you had, or what difficulty do you feel you have living with a woman who seem not to measure intellectually with you? What experiences or what challenges have you had, right? What challenges do you have living with a woman who seem not to, So it gets the men, it gets the stakeholders to open up and share. It's truly challenging that I would have to go fend for the home, cater for the home, do this and do that. And then we try to make them see reasons that when they work with their perhaps wives, or when their mothers are working with their fathers as co-pilots that it makes things easier. So this is a reason for the girl child or for the woman to be empowered, right? So that the workload will be less on the part of the men. Right? We are not entirely taking off your responsibilities, but we know how difficult, we know how challenging it is for one person. So you can imagine when there is a co-pilot helping you pilot the ship, it makes the work a whole lot easier. So tapping into their own living experiences helps them, see reasons with us, right? Because it's more like a negotiation we are into. So that is one of the strategies I often use, and it has always worked for me. Right now, there is this campaign they call the he for she. And once you ask them that question, the he for she, that is men who tend to be feminists, men who tend to speak for the women folk who feel that women ought to be represented. Oh, I'm sorry, this sunlight is really disturbing. Okay, so that's about the he for she. So that's how we engage the stakeholders of the community to allow us access to now take it up with the women or with the girl child to introduce the empowerment schemes or to have a one-on-one discussion with them as to what's the prevalent challenge they have in their community is and how we can step into address such issues. Then on the broader notes where we might face resistance, right? So there are some policies that has been put in place already. I don't know if you know about the VAP Act, the Violence Against Public and Private Life Act. Initially it was being moved as though it's a gender-based violence act, but too many resistance now made the legislation in Nigeria to call it the VAP Act, the Violence Against the Private and Public Life, right? Now, this act goes to at least make provision for, oh God, excuse me, please.
Sure. Okay.
All right, thank you. So this act makes provision for gender-based cases. When I say gender-based cases, I'm not just talking about, we know that rape, when it comes to rape issues and rape cases, it affects the female gender as well as it affects the male gender, right? But these things weren't in place before now. So most of the resistance we see up there is as a result of a lack of such acts or policies in place. But as it is in Nigeria now, out of the 36 states plus the FCT, at least about 17 states, if I'm not misquoting, for a lack of correct statistics right now. But I know, will I say 3%? 3% have been able to domesticate this act in the states. At least I know of Akwa Ibom, I know of Lagos State, I know of Abuja. This act has been implemented in the states whereby such resistances are not so much of a thing right now. Right now, in this present time, what we are really talking about is not about the resistance of maybe governance or legislation. What we are talking about in this present time is how to actually start implementing these policies that has been put in place for women to thrive, right? So policies already have been put in place for women to thrive, but to start implementing these policies, one of the such policies is the not too young to wrong policy, the acts of oh god, for lack of words now, for lack of words, but the policy of it's the CDOR policy that women at least ought to have some 30% representation in governance. So there are such similar acts and policies that are already being put in place. So, but what we lack right now, it's not about the domestication or the legislation of these policies, but the implementation of these policies. So advocacy has moved from seeking or negotiating that these policies be made for women to be represented or for the governance or legislation not to resist to women thriving, but has now moved to negotiating for these things, to negotiating for its implementation, right? So basically that's the resistance. And it's not a one man's fight. It's not a one man's thing. I truly appreciate that there are so many organizations, women-led organizations right now, who are advocating to see that these policies and acts are being implemented.
Right. Thank you very much for that explanation. And you
Thank
talk
you.
like a leader. So I understand that you're a member of a wonderful platform, the OLD and family. Can you
Yeah.
hear me, please?
Yes, I
Oh,
can hear
great.
you.
So I understand you're a member of the OLN family. And very curiously, I'd like to ask, what are your expectations in the OLN? And do you think there are some measures that could be put in place to ensure the smooth functioning and the establishment of OLDN in Nigeria? Could you briefly explain to us what you think?
Okay, it's truly been an interesting journey the past few months being a member of OLDN, and so far the operations, the functions has. I must really commend the director. I must really commend the chairperson of OLDN here in Nigeria. He's truly doing a great job because I see how he motivates and encourages members to put up um, put up with advocacies or put up with programs and projects that support governance, that supports leadership, that supports advocacies against issues concerning women and advocacies that promote issues for women. And I would rather say it's commendable. I've really not been part of the network for a long time, but the few months I've been in it, um, it's been a journey. It's been an interesting journey. The persons I've been able to meet, so networking wise, collaborating with people wise, getting to meet like-minded individuals who are passionate to drive social changes, right? So it's a platform worth being in or worth being a member in. My expectation, yes, majorly was I became a part of ODN to network with like-minded people and ensure that I'm in an environment. I would call it an environment. I know for now it's still virtual, looking at the whole COVID-19 outbreak and all of that. But it's still, there is this warmth, there is this sense of belonging when you log in, when you sign in into the community, and you know that the persons in this community are reputable, sensible individuals who know the destination they are journeying on, right? And it's also interesting to know that this like-minded persons are treading the path of governance, treading the path of leadership, treading the path of of life that I am treading on, right? So my expectation, yes, is to network more with these people, see how we can form coalitions or partnerships to birth the changes that we envision and desire. And I won't really say much about what I would want them to put into place for now or not. So far, the operations for me, it has been has been what's experiencing. So perhaps moving forward, truly, if there is any loophole cited or whatever, I would always reach out to the country director to air my opinion.
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. So I think during your second answer or your third answer, you mentioned something projects that the DWCI is working on several projects currently. And before
Yes.
this, I actually had gone through your profile. It was hard finding you, but I found you. So
Okay.
I saw an interesting flyer. I was supposed to share it now, but due to network issues and due to timing, I will just ask you very briefly about it. One of your projects I saw was the Reach Out to Five Girls campaign. Could you tell us what this is about, very briefly, please?
Okay, the Reach Out to Five Girls campaign was, or is a campaign we put up to mark the International Day of the Girl Child, which it's supposed to happen on the 11th of October. So what we did was to engage our volunteers, part of our mission statement, which is to educate young girls and women to find their voices, right? Find their voices. And when we talk about finding voices, we're talking about self-awareness. We're talking about self-awakening. And we believe in catching them young because we understand that there are
Sorry,
factors.
sorry to cut you. You believe in
Okay.
what?
Catching young. the
Okay.
girls. We believe in getting them at a very young age, right? Because already there are factors delimiting their thriving. There are factors delimiting their emergence. So if we should, at this tender age, help them understand that regardless of what the stereotypes the society has placed on them as women, that they can become more by understanding that there is more about that they are humans. I love to say you were a human being before the society called you a woman, right? So you are a human, which means that your abilities, your capabilities, your strengths, your experiences, or even joining your path and joining the path on becoming, the encounters and the experiences you will have will decide and determine what you become, right? And you will solely be the drive, you'll solely be the driver of this you're becoming, and not what the society has tried to delimit you using the word woman, right? So we we see a need to take to the grassroots, right? This project, the reach out to 5 girls campaign, is basically happening not in the metropolis but in the suburbs, and we have a sole reason for that. So we are taking out, our volunteers are currently in the field reaching out to these girls to help them find their voices, help them develop the confidence. We know is a process, right? So this is more like the first step of the process, and there is a follow-up of this campaign. We don't just reach out to them and we let them go. No, there is a follow-up process to ensure that there is sustainability of the projects, right? So we teach them self-awareness to make them understand their true identity and what it means to have a purpose or a focus for life. And why do we do this? Not just for their personal growth, right? But for when we say societal relevance, we try to teach them to see how they can, with an understanding and awakening of who they are, engage in driving the changes they desire in their communities. And that is engaging in community development or community development. So that's basically what the reach out to 5 girl campaign is about. It was to mark the International Day of the Girl Child, and we thought, okay, we've had so many of the virtual meetings earlier with the people in the metropolis and all. It's time to reach out to these girls in the rural area and see how we can also help them in sharpening their mindset on what is obtainable in this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Regina. I'm not going to call you by your first name because I don't want to pronounce it wrongly.
It's all right.
Anyways, thank you very much, first of all, for joining this session. I'm so happy. Because of time, I'm not going to ask you what I wanted to ask you, because if we talk of empowerment, there are so many factors around, like circumferencing around the word empowerment. Also, as a result of being downward, you agree with me that a lot of ladies might have encountered rape as well. And as a result of that, they are demoralized. And aside from rape, some might have suffered discrimination and other factors. So probably in our next edition, I will be asking you a few more questions pertaining to these other factors surrounding the empowerment for ladies. But as of now, once again, I'm truly honored to have you on this platform. Briefly tell us on okay, no problem, just share with us your link so we can attach it to this video, and anyone who wants to meet up with you and be a partner of this project, they can visit you through that link. We've come to the end of today's session. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you're watching us on Facebook, please do the usual, follow us on Facebook, and on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and why not hit the notification button, which is the bell. Whenever we upload a video, you're the very first to see our videos. And if you're on Instagram, make sure you follow us, and on Twitter, make sure you follow us. Thank you very much. And once again, I'm your anchor, Blessing Dolo, from the OLD and TV studios. Thank you, and stay tuned in for the next edition.